How wonderful to be speaking at the first ever PSA Afghanistan convention. Thank you for inviting me. I feel privileged to be a professional speaker. I feel privileged to be able to travel the world, and I feel privileged to be paid silly money to do it. You can do the same. So what do you need? What do you need in order to become a professional speaker, an international professional speaker? The first thing you need is a keynote, a carefully crafted, compelling 30-minute keynote. Now, I know what you're thinking. I don't need a keynote. I'm a trainer. I don't want to do keynotes. I just do workshops. I just do masterclasses. I don't need a keynote. Yes, you do. I believe that people are much more likely to book a speaker if they've seen them speak. And therefore, I'm a massive believer in doing showcases. And that's the way I've developed my international business all over the world. So what do I mean by showcase? What I mean is speaking for no fee. That's not speaking for free. I always charge expenses. It's speaking for no fee to an audience that contains people who are likely to book you. So let me give you an example. I should explain firstly that I speak on business and I speak on business growth. So my audience needs to be people running business or involved in running business. So CEOs, boards of directors, managing directors, trustees of charities, from the very smallest one-man startup all the way through to the biggest corporate in the world. That's my audience. So when I'm doing a showcase, those are the people that I need to have in the audience, and you need to do a lot of research to find out where they are most likely to be. So when I set out to develop my international business, and I should explain there's only me in my business, there's no staff, you have to torture yourself, don't you, when there's only you in your business. So what I agreed with myself was that I would focus on one geography at a time, and that I would visit for a week at a time, once a quarter. I'd do that for 2 years, and if at the end of 2 years I wasn't being successful, then I'd move on to somewhere else. So let me give you an example. When I decided to develop the Middle East market, I did my research and established that really Dubai was the place to start. And then I had to look at where would I find business leaders in Dubai. And at that time, and it's changed a little now, a lot of the business leaders were expatriates from all over the world. And what I found was that there were national business groups. So they were an obvious target for me. And I started contacting them. The British business group, the South African business group, the American, the Canadian, the German. A number of those said to me, we don't have speakers. Now, I guess I could have taken that as a negative, but for me, that's a real positive. Because what that meant was, if I could persuade them to have me speak, I'd be unique. I would stand out and would perhaps stand a better chance of success of someone booking me. After I'd done 2 or 3 of those keynotes in Dubai, I remember I was back in London and I got a phone call. And this man said, I'm the chief executive of this large business in Dubai. Are you free on these dates? We're interested in having you speak at our conference in Mauritius in 6 months' time. I said that I was. And then he said, well, the next thing we want to do is we're going to hold auditions in London next month, if you'd come along to that. I then had the most grueling audition I've ever had in my life. At the end of that, he said, okay, we'd now like to go ahead. The next thing we'd like to do is for us to fly you out to Dubai for 2 days, to immerse you in our company, and also to go through what you're going to speak about. And then some 4 months later, the conference was 3 days in Mauritius. To this day, that is the most lucrative booking I have ever had. And that came from a showcase. So, showcasing, that's the number one thing you need to do. You've got to have this 30-minute keynote. It's got to be carefully honed to be exactly 30 minutes to the nanosecond. It's got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It needs to have one or two stories. I need to know more about you at the end of your keynote than I knew about you at the beginning. It needs to take me through an emotional journey, and it needs to have one, possibly two takeaways at the end, things that I can implement immediately. That's what you need to have. And the way to rehearse those and practice those and get them critiqued is within the Speaking Association. It goes on all the time, all around the world, to get that speech to where you want it to be. Okay, so what's the next thing you need after a keynote? Well, you need a speaker bag. This is my speaker bag. This goes everywhere in the world with me. It's saved me on many occasions, and it's made me money. So what sort of things do I have in here? I have a projector. That projector goes everywhere with me. I can run a masterclass for probably up to 50 people, depending upon the acoustics in the room, using that projector. I have, of course, my MacBook. And something else, vitally important, is a power lead, an extension lead, because if you have one of these, it means you only need one adapter for the local needs rather than two or three. So how can my speaker's bag make me money? Well, again, let me give you an example. I was speaking at the PSA South Africa convention, the Speaking Association South Africa convention in Cape Town, and I wasn't expecting any work, but I did what I always do, and I would recommend you do, is if ever you're traveling anywhere in the world, add 1 or 2 days on the end, because you never know what might happen. So I did my speech at the convention, and afterwards a couple came up to me, a husband and wife, and they said, we own a school for chefs, and we'd love to have you come and speak. Is there any chance? And I said, well, yes, I'm free tomorrow. I'd be more than happy to. And they said, that would be great, but we don't have any equipment. We don't have a projector or anything. I said, that's not a problem. I have absolutely everything, all life support systems for a professional speaker. All I need is a blank wall, and we're in business. The next day, I ran a half-day masterclass for all the trainee chefs, and the fee they paid me more than covered the entire trip to South Africa. So, a speaker's bag. What else have we got in here? Yes, very small point. You need a large jumbo pen if you're going to write on flip charts. Almost every venue in the world I've ever been to, the pens are useless. They're either dead, dry, or too small. Take one with you everywhere. And something else you need are 2 remotes, not just one. This is my standard remote, but I was speaking in Dubai. In fact, it was to 800 people. It was all these various national associations that I mentioned earlier. It was in the Amani Privé, which is in the Burj Khalifa, the largest building in the world. And I was getting going, and then I noticed my slides were jumping about. They were going on, off, backwards, forwards. Something in that building was clearly on the same radio frequency as my remote. Not a problem. I then changed to my second remote, which uses a different technology entirely. So a little tip for you, have 2 remotes with different technologies. Okay, so we've got ourselves a keynote speech, and we've got ourselves a speaker's bag with all the life support systems for a speaker. What else do you need? Well, you need to be out there online. You need to have a website, Your website needs to have videos of you. It needs to be clearly addressing not only the people who might be in your audience, but the people who might book you. They may be different people. You've got to be addressing their needs and their wants and objectives from having you speak for them. I'll come back to this in a moment, but I think your website these days is orders of magnitude more important than it was just a matter of 1 or 2 years ago. What else do you need? You need to be on social networking. For me, the most important is LinkedIn. I've got 24,000 contacts on LinkedIn, and I get business directly through LinkedIn. I spoke last year at I was the keynote speaker at the Business Summit in Ghana, Africa. That came directly through a contact in LinkedIn, and the only communication I ever had with the person who booked me was through LinkedIn. You never know where inquiries and bookings are going to come from. Maybe your website, maybe LinkedIn, maybe it's YouTube. You must have a YouTube channel. You want to have as many videos out there as possible, ones that you make directly like this, ones that are of you speaking, but the more you can have on your YouTube channel, the better. Little story for you. I had a phone call one day from a lady in Trinidad in the West Indies. And she said, I work for a government organisation, and we're going to be holding a business excellence conference. And I was looking at your website, and I had a look at your profile online, and we'd be interested in having you speak. So I said, that's great, and we had a good conversation. And then she said, well, would you please send me all your information? So I did. And as normal, I quoted a fee plus business class airfare and expenses. And a couple of days later, she rang me back and she said, oh, we've never paid that much for a speaker before. And I thought, I know what's coming. She's going to look for a price reduction. But no, that isn't what she said at all. She said to me, would you expect us to pick you up at the airport? And I said, well, yes, that would be normal. And she said, well, I'd rather not do that. We'd rather not do that. Would you mind re-quoting for an all-inclusive price? Flights, hotels, everything. I said, yeah, of course I will. So I then had a look and I found that for Trinidad, one could get a package, a holiday package, a 5-day package of hotels, flights, everything. And my wife and I could go together. I could go a couple of days early and I could then offer to do media, to do TV and radio. And we would have a couple of days at the end, so again, if some more work came, or indeed we wanted to go and tour the island. That's what happened. I was booked. And I have to share with you that at 3 a.m. one morning, my wife and I were on the beach and we watched leatherback turtles laying eggs in the beach, in the sand. An experience we'll never forget. And that all came from being a professional speaker and being able to speak in these exotic locations and sometimes less exotic locations around the world. What else do you need out there online? Well, there was some interesting research I saw recently from Microsoft saying that in an increasing number of market sectors, the client had made 85% of the decision before they first contacted the company. My opinion is that applies more to professional speakers than almost anyone else. They've done 85% of the work online, and you've got to enable that to happen. So what's the first thing you need? The first thing you need is to own your Google page. What do I mean by that? Well, in my case, I had some work done to establish exactly what someone looking for what I do would type into Google, what phrase that would be. And I work incredibly hard to try and make sure if you do type that phrase into Google, I appear twice as often as any other speaker in the world. And if you type that phrase into YouTube, there's probably 50% more of my videos than anyone else's. This is not about spending money, it's more about focus in everything you do out there in cyberspace. So you've got to own your Google page. Interestingly, a couple of years ago now, I was booked by a large Saudi corporation to speak at their annual conference in Cairo in Egypt. And I'd never heard of them before, but when I got there, I had a word with the guy who'd booked me, and I said, so why me? And he said, we knew exactly the topic we wanted to be the theme of this conference. And when I typed that in, you appeared more often than anybody else, so who else would I contact? So you've got to own your Google page. Having looked at Google, that will take them to your website inevitably. And as I said earlier, I think your website is order of magnitude more important than it used to be. You've got to think about who might buy you, number one. That's who we're talking about here. It might be a meeting planner who has got just a few seconds to decide between you and somebody else. So you've got to have something compelling. You must have a video, full frontal, no introduction, no nonsense at the start, go straight in where they can see you performing, they can see your audience reacting, they can see something about you and your topic and how compelling you are. Your website has got to be something which is sticky and keeps them looking and wants them to look at more of what you do and find out more about you. After that, they will go up into cyberspace and have a look at you. They'll look at you on LinkedIn. They'll look at you maybe on Facebook. They'll look at you on YouTube. They may look at you on Pinterest or Instagram. It all depends. Different countries have different focuses. Different industries have different focuses. But again, a story, if I may, a very good colleague of mine in the Professional Speaking Association here in the UK, Matt Crabtree, he specialises in working with the large banks around the world, and he has quite a substantial training company. And he was telling me that he recently got a large contract from one of those banks. And when he met the woman who had booked him, he said, "So why us?" And she said, "Well, that's a very good question, because I really couldn't decide between you and another company." She said, "What I did was I then had a look at your personal LinkedIn profile. I looked at the LinkedIn profile of the chief executive of the other training company. You had more recommendations. That's why you got the work." All these things are vitally important today. So, I think that's the 85% point that Microsoft have been talking about. What do they do next? Well, they've just got some clarification points, maybe. They want to ask you some questions. They're going to click on that Contact Us button, maybe on your website. And by the way, my statistics are that an awful lot of companies, organizations, and people never respond to that Contact Us button. Please make sure you do. And you need to set metrics. If you are working around the world, you, to some extent, have got to be working on a 24-hour clock and make sure that they get a response from you very quickly. It might be a response that says, "Sorry, it's our night at the moment, but I will contact you at this time the next day," in their language, in their time zone. So, once you've done all those things, and you've done it very quickly, I know a number of speakers, I hate to tell you, who actually take some time to respond to those inquiries, you've got your booking. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. 3 things you need to be an international professional speaker. You need a keynote speech, you need a speaker's bag with all life support systems in it, and you've got to have that presence out there in cyberspace, on the internet. Absolutely perfect. But a question for you before I finish. Why? Why do you want to speak internationally? You're going to spend a lot of time in airports. You're going to spend a lot of time in aeroplanes and international hotels that are all the same everywhere in the world. You're going to have all kinds of hassle. And you're not going to earn as much, are you? Because no matter where you go, you're going to be away for 3 days. You'll only get paid for the one booking, but actually you're away from the office, you're away from speaking at home for 3 days. Is that what you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Well, I'll give you my reason. It enhances me, it enhances my business. I love getting into the business culture of other countries. I love getting feedback and feeding that back in when I speak in other places. It's done all kinds of things for me, and it's an essential part of what I do as a professional speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to sharing a stage with every single one of you who wish to be an international speaker at some exotic location somewhere in the world, and for us both to be paid silly money to do it. Thank you.